Cottonmouth Media.
We had an opportunity to like come up with a business idea for a class project and pitch it to the class and then like work on it all semester. And so Ron and I started working on Sana packaging just as like, hey, we got a class project. We both smoke pot. We're friends. We both think cannabis packaging is ridiculous and stupid. This sounds like a fun class project to do, you know, a grad school project about pot, like, haha.
The Bongcast.
Yeah. Baby girl, you're so damn fine, though. Wanna know if I can hit it from behind, though. I'm sipping on you like some fine wine, though. When it's over.
Yo, cannabis lovers, welcome to the Bongcast, a podcast about people in cannabis. My name is Matt Meredith, and I am your host, your guide, whatever you want me to be. Really? And on the latest episode of the Bongcast, I had the great privilege of sitting down with James Eichner of Sana Packaging in Venice Beach, California. Sana Packaging is a cannabis packaging company based in Denver, Colorado that is also in California that specializes in creating circular packaging products for the cannabis industry. We'll dive into what exactly that means in the podcast. They currently have two different types of sustainable products. One of them is a hemp-based plastic that they created, and another is a reclaimed oceans plastic product. Really interesting conversations in this episode. This sit down with James was probably one of my favorites actually that I've done so far on the Bongcast for a few reasons. One, I actually connected with Sana Packaging first back in 2017 when I was still attending Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for an entrepreneurship class. I interviewed Ron, the other founder, about their company Sana Packaging, and they were in the very, very early stages of still gathering their molds for their original product. Two, James and I discussed the amazing world of industrial hemp and how the market has developed over the years and how it will continue to develop. And three, James and I got to smoke a spliff together, and it was really great to see how far they've come in the last 2.5 years since I last spoke to them. I just had a really great time hanging out with James and talking about the cannabis industry and Sana Packaging. Without any further ado, please enjoy James Eichner of Sana Packaging on the Bongcast.
And I have coffee. I don't usually get coffee when I'm doing this, I feel like.
I've always got to have my like giant thing of caffeine.
Yeah. Is it coffee usually or tea?
It's usually iced coffee. Yeah. Addicted to iced coffee.
Should we spark this guy up?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Thanks for rolling it.
Of course.
Were you like the go-to guy to roll joints in your friend group and stuff? Would you like to do the honors?
Sure. Growing up, I grew up in Switzerland. And so like I didn't even like see a bong in real life until I like went to college in the States.
Yeah.
Because there just really isn't much of like a glass or pipe culture over there. I don't know if it's different now, but at least when I was growing up, it was spliffs were the only way that you could really get high. But then once I moved to the States, I was definitely the go-to joint roller for a while until I, slowly taught all my friends how to do it.
Yeah. Did you ever do it professionally or not, just for personal?
No. Although there were periods where I definitely like laughed and was like, well, if like everything goes to hell, like, all goes to shit, I can always like roll joints. That's like, people do that now. Did you see that article that came out like a week or two ago? Like Snoop Dogg's got like a guy that he pays like $50,000 a year who's just like his blunt roller.
Yeah,
I
saw he had something where he was putting out an ad for that.
Oh wow, that's fucking hilarious.
And then I think like he actually hired someone that rolls joints for $50,000 a year.
Dude, $50K a year for rolling joints ain't bad.
And think about someone that is like actually really good at it. They probably don't have an amazing job, and $50K just to like roll blunts would be so sick.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're now like hanging out with Snoop.
Yeah.
That's cool that you grew up in Switzerland. When you smoked weed for the first time, what was that like? Was it in Switzerland or in the States?
Yeah, I was 13. I was with my two friends, Damien and Enrico, and they had smoked weed for the first time like the weekend before, so they'd already done it, and like they had spent the whole week telling me how like it was gonna be like, and it's like 13, so like what year was this? This is like 2001 or 2 or something, And
Young
so
blood.
so the Matrix was really big then.
Yeah.
And they were like, dude, you're gonna like, it's gonna be so fun. It's gonna be like you're in the Matrix. Like it felt like everything was slow mo, you know, and they were basically like describing it like as if like, you know, like tripping acid for the first time or something. And yeah, and I like went into it like into my first time smoking thinking that it was going to be this like insane thing and that I'm going to be in the Matrix and this is going to be awesome.
Right.
And it was awesome. But like, I was definitely like, guys, when's the Matrix part going to happen?
I feel like when you first hear about it before you've done it, it seems like doing a psychedelic.
Yeah, totally. And I definitely have had those experience, like not in well over a decade, but like those early experiences where it sometimes is like a psychedelic,
Right.
You know?
Right. You just have like probably the first few times where you really overdo it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like an edible.
Yeah.
Had any harsh edible experiences?
Nothing like, nothing beyond just being like way too high and being like, okay, I need to go to bed now.
Yeah. So when you smoked when you were 13, was that like super illegal in Switzerland?
No, Switzerland actually has a really fascinating history with cannabis. And I'm not going to get the years all right, but it was legal for a while. And there were coffee shops and stuff similar to Amsterdam. And this was in the 90s. So when I was like really young, like, you know, way too young to smoke.
And what year were you born?
89.
Cool.
And then like in the late 90s, it became slightly more illegal, but people were still selling, like you could go to a head shop and they would have these little like canvas pillows and it would have weed inside of it, but it would be for like aromatherapy. So it was like a super like loophole way of like selling weed. And then
Kind of like DC today.
yeah, actually very similar to that. And then finally they didn't even allow that, but it was always still decriminalized.
And
So
it
no.
was a medical market or recreational first?
Well, right now they only have medical and CBD is legal there now. So like CBD flowers, like all the rage there. But I mean, no, back in this time, it was all like, we also like, you only had weed certain times of the year. So like, and it was based on harvest season, right? So like, you would have flower from like October until like June, you know, that's like how long the reserves would last.
Right.
And then like early summer, like the weed would start to dry up. And then like June through October, it would all be hash that was coming in from, you know, Morocco, Egypt, Spain, or, you know, wherever it was being smuggled in from.
That's cool that you still had like your own cannabis industry experience.
Yeah.
That wasn't in the States.
Yeah.
Did you feel like a lot of the things you learned growing up in Switzerland with that cannabis industry converts over to like your California or like I guess your United States market knowledge?
I mean, honestly, no, it's all so different. I mean, this was like, you know, the weed we were smoking when we were kids.
Sure, everything's different too when you're a kid. But.
Yeah, but I mean, it was like stuff that like, you know, friends would grow it and like just like finding like plots in the woods and like stuff like that or in their backyards because like maybe they had like, you know, chill parents.
Right.
But so it was like very much not like an industry as it was like a thriving little, you know, black market.
Right. And it's still completely black market?
No. So now they have CBD's legal in Switzerland, or rather hemp is legal in Switzerland. And I think the THC content in their hemp, I don't think it's like the 0.01 or 0.1 or whatever it is that it has to be here. I think they allow a slightly higher THC content.
In the 2018 Farm Bill, did they change the content from 0.03 to 0.01? Just because I've seen 0.01 a few times now, and
yeah, no, they did. That has been changed. It is 0.01 here for sure. I know it was before. It used to be on a state-by-state basis too, I think. Whereas now with the 2018 Farm Bill, it's more standardized. But yeah, that was. It's funny, after the passing of the Farm Bill, I think, you know, everyone expected things to change really quickly, and they certainly have changed and are changing relatively quickly. But Hemp still got a long way to go. I think the biggest thing is just industry infrastructure, right? You can't go from like zero to like, all right, it's legal to thriving, robust market. There's a lot of explosion within the industry, but I think there's still a lot of like back end work that needs to happen on like supply chain and all that stuff.
Totally. I mean, that's how I've felt when I talk about like the upcoming potential federal legalization that people love to talk about, myself included. But I think that, even if it hypothetically, let's say a vote happened on the 2020 presidential election and it went through, the infrastructure would take years for it to apply. And even then you would have so much fight back from states, counties, cities. There would be a huge headache of a mess for a really long time, I think. Similar to, I'm sure, right, like you said, it's not instantly going to be a profitable, or like maybe profitable, but like not like a fine-tuned industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the way it's been happening on a state-by-state basis too, it's so much knowledge is siloed in these different state markets. And I always thought as a spectator from like the packaging side of the industry, when I'm watching new states go legal, I feel like I watch each new state go through like a similar learning curve of mistakes made, things learned from those mistakes. And it just, I think, really reflects like how little knowledge spillover there is from state to state. Like, sure, you have consultants going in from other states, like helping out and stuff, but by and large, each state has like had to struggle through, very similar issues, and often come to like similar conclusions. And I'm like, guys, why don't you learn from each other?
History repeats itself.
Yeah, history repeats itself state by state.
I definitely want to come back to talking more about the 2018 Farm Bill. But before we get there, I wanted to kind of like get more context on like just like you and your position. So you're the co-founder of Sana Packaging, and you're the chief strategy officer. What exactly does your role as like the chief strategy officer entail with Sana, and like what are you strategizing for?
Well, it's my co-founder Ron. He's the CEO, and when we were originally coming up with our titles, we were certain, we wanted him to be the CEO, leader of the company. But the reality is that we both do so much of everything. And so I was trying to think of like, okay, well, what's like a good, I'm not, every other C-level title was like too siloed, like chief marketing or chief operating. It's like, no, I'm like none of those things. I do like a bit of everything. And then really, being, for lack of a better term, like, co-CEO, or just like supporting Ron in his being CEO and like making sure he has all the support he needs. So that's like one aspect of it. And then,
and over time too, you guys, I'm sure you figured out your specific roles.
But we both create like, the company strategy together. Where our roles really diverge is Ron is much more operations and product development focused, where I'm more branding and marketing focused. So, the way I like to put it is Ron's inward facing, all the internal structure and skeleton of the company, and actually what, the company does, which is make packaging. And then I manage all the outward facing things. So branding, marketing, PR, basically just trying to tell our story.
Right. Have you found good success, you feel like, with the marketing you guys have done the last few years?
I think so.
How long have you guys been a company, by the way?
We've been a company for 3 years. We've been in the market for less than a year, though. So still a very new company.
Because you were just doing product development at first?
Yeah, there was, probably a solid 1.5 2 years of product development. And then we launched in the summer of 2018 with a pilot program with about 20 pilot customers. And then in February of 2019 is when we opened our doors for business to, the greater industry. And since then, it's been, really great, steady growth. Sometimes I think, being in product development and like a pilot phase as a company, it's such a volatile and uncertain place to be in. And so like, it just feels so great to, in the, 10 months that we've been really selling products to, have seen the growth that we have, gotten, to over 150 customers, sold over 1.6 million units of packaging, removed more than 16 tons of plastic waste from our ocean. That all feels really good. And I think we're finally starting to see, like, if we're making a painting, we've been sketching the whole time, and now it's like we're finally starting to fill it in.
Right.
And that feels great.
You kind of see the vision.
Yeah. Like the 3 years of labor and love starting to look more like a concrete, real thing that has a lot of potential and people are excited about. And you had asked about, like, if we've done a good job telling the story. I think we're lucky that it's an easy story to tell because, plastic waste and, the global climate crisis are, in the last few years, have become so front and center in, like, all public discourse,
right.
That it was really easy for us to get, I think, PR traction and story traction because it's something people, want to see. But I also think we do a good job in telling that story because it's really complicated.
Right.
And so you have to, like, distill things down, and, like, these changes that we're trying to make in, packaging, or just, the plastics industry in general. They're not easy things with easy solutions.
Right.
So yeah.
There's a ton of infrastructure I'm sure that you're battling.
Yeah, like materials is like only one side of the packaging problem, right? So you have people using bad materials, whether it's a plastic that can't be recycled or a plastic with a really low recycling rate, or just plastic in general, because why are you using a petroleum-based product for a single-use item? But so, material innovation is certainly one side of the problem, but that's, the whole other side, though, is the waste management infrastructure that we have to work with that is, kind of broken, and, also needs a lot of attention. So, like, as materials innovate, we need to make sure we can process those materials at the end of their useful lives. So, one of the things we're doing is from a strategic standpoint, we've got our B2B packaging, sell packaging, but we're also trying to start to, from a strategic standpoint, focus on, okay, what do we need to do on the, back end waste management side in order for, like, our vision to become a reality? Who do we have to work with? Is it municipalities, partner companies? And so we recently applied for grant funding through the state of Colorado to pilot a closed loop packaging model in Denver. We don't know whether we've gotten the grant yet, so fingers crossed. But we're starting to look at projects like that to where we can see, like, how do we actually put together the pieces to make, like, a truly circular cannabis packaging model in the city of Denver? And then if that works, can we then replicate it in other cities, other states, other markets?
Right.
So yeah, that's been, like, a cool part of it as well.
We were talking about it a little bit before. My girlfriend and I just finished a 110-day road trip when we were in Denver. I think we got a pre-roll that had your guys' packaging.
That's amazing.
And don't you guys, I think I saw on Weed Maps that you guys will exchange, or, like, if you bring back one of your containers, your pre-roll containers, you get a discount or something?
Oh, so that might be a promo that one of our customers is running.
I could be wrong about that, but I feel like I remember seeing that.
Yeah, that would definitely be on...
Like, just incentivizing the customer to get involved in that.
I'm, like, 99% sure we have customers that have run promos like that before. And, I think that's really great. A lot of our customers all of them, quite frankly, they're so forward thinking, and, like, I feel like people reach out to us the way they do because they, like, something clicks with them. And so our customers are always doing, like, really awesome stuff, whether it's with our packaging or just with their growing practices. It, like, never ceases to amaze me. I'm like, wow, we're working with, like, the best of the best out here, and that's awesome.
I'm sure you guys attract the type of client that you're looking for in the first place.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Yes and no, yeah, but it's always, like, starting to change just because, like, it's always changing because the landscape is changing. But, the biggest thing that we look for when, someone reaches out to us is like, do we have, the products necessary to help you? And if not, when will we? Or, but beyond that, it's like, value alignment. Is this customer going to be a good fit for us? Do we see like a lot of growth potential here? Are there other business practices like reflective of, our values? And we're lucky that we get to, have so many great people reaching out to us.
Yeah. Why did you guys start Sauna Packaging initially?
We started Sauna Packaging because we were frustrated cannabis consumers. Ron and I, we met at the University of Colorado Boulder when we were there as grad school students, and became friends. And we were both just like sick of cannabis packaging, and we had an opportunity for a class project and a sustainable venturing class to like come up with a business idea.
Were you guys like environmental majors or something?
We were getting our master's in business, and we both focused on entrepreneurship and sustainability within that. We had an opportunity to like come up with a business idea for a class project and pitch it to the class, and then like work on it all semester. And so Ron and I started working on Sauna Packaging just as like, hey, we got a class project. We both smoke pot. We're friends. We both think cannabis packaging is ridiculous and stupid. This sounds like a fun class project to do, a grad school project about pot, like, haha.
Right.
And then here we are, like, 3 years later. We worked on it for like a semester. And as part of that, we'd like been interviewing a lot of industry professionals in the Boulder area, just as part of our research. And in that, we'd spoken to Patrick and Micah at Canopy Boulder, which is a cannabis-specific accelerator. And so during our last semester of school, we were like, why don't we just apply to the accelerator and like see what happens? And if we get in, we'll like make it work with school. And we got in, so we made it work. And then the ball just like never stopped rolling. It kept being awesome. Like, let's try and take it one more level and see what happens. Like, why quit now? And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, it's a real thing. It's happening.
Yeah, that's funny. When I reached out to you guys and I interviewed Ron while I was at Cal Poly, it was an entrepreneurship class, and my group, the class was about just taking any business's waste and creating a usable product out of it. Mm-hmm. And so then, of course, there's like 7 different groups or whatever focusing on different things. Some people focus on food, some people focus on whatever. We focused on like, some people focused on batteries. We focused on like, it came down to like the trimmings of cannabis plants, because I was like, they're definitely not doing anything with that shit. If anything, like they're throwing it back into their crop like at the time, just for the soil or whatever, they're not actually making it into something, or like, maybe they're using it, some of it to like make hash or whatever. But there was so much not used, I felt like, so we were just figuring out what we could do with it. And then it came down to like smoking chips, creating pellets, like smoking chip pellets from like cannabis trimmings or like hemp trimmings.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
So that was like what it completely was theoretical for that class, but we like came across Sauna Packaging, and we saw you guys were one of the only people in the industry that was kind of rolling with this hemp-based packaging idea. And I'm surprised there aren't more people trying to compete with you guys in that field.
I think there's a few. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a ton of competition out there in the cannabis packaging space in general.
Right.
But as far as hemp plastics go as a specific material, it's really hard.
I remember when we interviewed Ron, he was saying how expensive it was.
Yeah.
Just to get like a mold.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just like the startup cost of, manufacturing and stuff. But with hemp plastic specifically, when we were starting off, it was still in those like state specific pilot programs, so like steady supplies of hemp were a lot harder to come by. This is like where earlier, talking about just lacking industry infrastructure, where it's still ramping up. And like, I'm sure a lot of companies larger than us have looked into hemp plastics, but they just, learned about it, saw its potential, and then went and like looked like, okay, what's like the state of, hemp plastics right now? And then they were like, oh shit, like it needs to be built. Like it's still, it's like there's no state of hemp, like it's still right. And so as a small company, we're, one of the things we specialize in is plugging into these emerging material supply chains and finding end use cases for those materials and creating a demand for those materials and helping those supply chains grow. And so, it's just going to take time for it to like really, be on scale with even just other, bioplastics.
Yeah.
But it will happen.
Yeah. You think companies like Coach Bottles or something would do that? Hemp-based packaging?
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
they're big. Right?
They're big. They may have even looked into it. I know I was psyched to see, I think it was like over 420 and Earth Day that they announced that they were looking into sustainable packaging options. And I think they've partnered with a few companies. I know they partnered with Sungrown Packaging and I forget what others. But I was stoked to see that because, really like for us to succeed, and our mission and our vision is for everyone to be using sustainable packaging, and more specifically circular packaging. So we need everyone moving in that direction. And it's not a thing about, it's not about competition in the sense of like, oh no, we need to be the only ones doing this to stay differentiated. Like, no, like this way of thinking needs to become the norm. And we really, there's no room for bad packaging.
Right.
We need to just, with time transition away from that completely, which means we need everyone from the biggest and smallest packaging company to be, moving in that direction.
Right. Damn, so that makes black market a different beast to deal with on a packaging level, right?
In what sense?
I don't know, just like black market products, they're not going to buy hemp-based packaging from you. That's probably more expensive, of course, and then
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it's just such a prominent market. That's why I bring it up.
Yep. Yeah, the black market's interesting. I don't think there's no easy like answer there in terms of whether like it's good or bad. I see like both sides of the coin basically. Like I know there's so many small farmers out there that have been growing for generations and they want to keep growing, but like couldn't transition into the legal market for whatever reason, whether it was like financial or, couldn't get all their like permits in place or like my heart really goes out to that community, specifically in like Northern California. And so I want them to continue doing what they do, right? Because they're the OGs. They like created this whole industry and this whole culture. But at the same time, I also see like if we want weed to be legal, there needs to be regulatory oversight. So it's like, so I also see the benefit of like regulation and like all this stuff. But it's and I think the tricky thing is too, is it's like most issues, it's complicated. And I don't think any state or county has like really nailed it yet, but like hopefully, we're able to preserve, the old school cannabis culture, like moving forward.
Right.
So yeah, the black market's complicated.
Yeah, no doubt. Like briefly, why is hemp plastics better?
So, if we're looking at bioplastics and, different plant-based feedstocks to use for polymer production or for biocomposites, you're basically looking at like an agricultural crop. And so, looking first at the agricultural perspective, most bioplastics are made out of, things like corn or canaf, but mostly corn. And, how's corn grown then? So corn's monocropped, it's super water intensive, it's super pesticide intensive. And so just from like an agricultural standpoint, hemp is a great rotational crop. So it's great to grow, in rotation with other crops.
Right.
And the reason it's a great rotational crop is because it remediates the soil that it's grown in. So it like makes the soil healthier. And then when you monocrop something like corn, it really just like over time destroys the soil. And it's also not a canopy crop. So that means that like the sun just also bakes the ground, which over years and seasons is really damaging to soil health. Whereas hemp is a canopy crop, so shades the ground, replenishes nutrients. It also has a much shorter growing cycle than corn, as well as uses, significantly less water and none of the pesticides.
It's like what, 3-4 months, right? For
yeah,
industrial hemp?
yeah, something like that, like 80 to 90 days. I don't know. I'm not a farmer. But so those, so you have all those benefits just, to start off with. And then I think, it's really yet to be determined whether it's a better material to make, bioplastic out of than, corn, because many of the most advanced consumer bioplastics right now are corn derived, and we make polymers by, extracting the cellulose from the corn and, all these other ways. And, we haven't really gotten there with hemp yet. So it's hard to compare. What we're using right now is a fiber reinforced biocomposite, which means that we're using a base resin, which is a PLA, and then we're infusing it with micronized hemp hurd. So we're not even at the point of like where we're using hemp-derived polymers.
I'll pretend I know what the fuck you just said.
Yeah. But the short answer would be that like,
I was following, but
it's complicated,
yeah,
dude.
No,
it took like, I still have such a like layman's understanding of all this. We're a packaging company, but like I'm not a material scientist. And like when our R&D people like talk to me about this stuff, I'm like so much of it goes over my head.
Yeah.
Ron's like way more in tune with that, with like the specifics than I am, just because he's the operations guy.
A good amount of
but I have like a pretty rehearsed spiel that I can give of like, all right, here's like my talking points for this. But if you were to ask me to like dive deeper in any one of those things, I'd be like, who you should really talk to is.
I mean, that's okay if you know who to direct them to. Then that's the next best
exactly.
thing. Obviously, it's kind of complicated. But explaining that, part of your guys' marketing, I'm sure, is getting people to understand that on a basic level.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you begin, to, like, educate people on that to make it understood that that's, really important?
That's a really complicated question and an evolving answer. But, like, I think you have to start off like explaining like, big picture things. So like, why do we need circular packaging? What is circular packaging? What does it mean to be, like practicing like regenerative agriculture? And kind of like breaking it down into like more digestible pieces. And so much of this, I think, comes down to word choice too, because some terms, like the term, what does sustainability even mean? It's so open-ended, whereas something like circular has, a much more clearly defined thing, which is, keeping materials and products in use for as long as possible, and then, recovering everything through, recycling or, composting, but then keeping everything in use. And so, it's similar to like, if you look at like plant-based becoming, the new way to like talk about vegan, I think vegan became such a loaded word, and like sustainability is like a similar thing. So we need to like,
circular.
Yeah. Or like, just like almost like rebrand sustainability, but in a way that actually gets people to understand what needs to happen in order for us to, create a world that we can actually like live in these changing times.
Right.
And so word choice is super important, and being super clear with like, fine, this is compostable, sure. Well, what does that actually mean? This is recyclable. What does that actually mean? Like, what percent of it is actually getting recycled, and then like, if so, like how much of that is actually getting repurchased and put back into the market? And it's just a complicated task because it's got all these like, there's a million rabbit holes you could dive down, and they're each like unique and complicated in their own way.
Right.
And so I think brands just need to, move marketing efforts in an educational direction. Because if we all can start speaking the same language, and then we can get things done a lot faster.
So you guys like posting videos about that?
Yeah, or we're trying to, with our like customer spotlight series, we're trying to like, highlight sustainability practices of our customers and things they do. All the other, all the content that we put out about like ourselves, sure, like some of it's like sales, promotional or whatever, but if it's not that, then we want it to be informative and educational, and like we really are trying to like push a super specific narrative, which is packaging, and more specifically cannabis packaging needs to be circular. Mm-hmm. And we need to be designing this whole system with circularity in mind. And cannabis is an interesting opportunity for this because it's a new industry. It's not like going to an existing industry like, the liquor industry that has like, crazy robust infrastructure and being like, hey, we're going to change all this now. With cannabis, we're like still building it. So like the opportunities to be like, hey, let's do it right the first time. We have an opportunity to like put this theory into action very easily.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
I think you guys could have a badass podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to talk about.
Right. I mean, you guys could talk about so many different sustainability practices, and I mean, it could go so far beyond even just like your cannabis packaging. There's so many different things that could feed into that conversation.
Yeah. Well, because it's all about the bigger structural changes that need to happen, and that, none of that's really cannabis specific. That's just like specific to like just the way everything works.
Can you define what hemp is?
What hemp is?
I think I know the technical definition, but I want to.
I don't know. No.
So that the audience understands what hemp technically is.
Hemp is part of the cannabis family. It's typically grown for industrial uses versus consumption, although that's different with CBD now. But I mean, really, it's like the difference in like, with like 0.01% THC and stuff, that's so arbitrary,
For it to be like legally hemp, right?
Right, for it to be legally hemp, but it's like, what is hemp? Like, well, I don't know, like in China, they grow hemp that is like, 13% THC, because like it's considered hemp based on like end use. Uh-huh. So if your end use there is for fiber production or seed production or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like they just care about like, okay, you're not like selling it to like get high on.
Right. How oddly kind of them.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I don't know. Defining hemp's complicated, but it's an industrial crop.
Right. No, I think that defines it.
Yeah.
Just like defining it from like marijuana, typically that we smoke. In layman's terms, right? Like industrial hemp is technically it has 0.01% THC or less when you harvest the crop.
Right.
Versus cannabis or marijuana rather is over that percentage. Obviously a lot higher in THC content than 1% or 0.05.
Right. But the legal boundaries that we're putting around what is hemp and what is cannabis or what is marijuana are so ridiculous.
Yeah, like on a plant level, right?
Yeah, on a plant level, because it's like, okay, so you're trying to contain these plants to some laws that we need to all agree upon.
Right. What did you do before sauna?
Before sauna,
I guess you were a student, but...
I was a student most immediately before sauna. But before that, I worked in the environmental nonprofit sector, and dabbled in the music industry for a while, but nothing like super crazy.
Yeah, what'd you do?
I like interned at a bunch of different like booking and management, agencies around the Front Range in Colorado.
You play music?
No, just like a live music junkie, avid show goer. And then ended up in the nonprofit side of the music industry, like professionally for a few years. And then...
Have you ever been to a High Life Music Festival?
No.
I feel like you like it.
Where's that?
It was at the, it's in San Bernardino, like at the orange, whatever stadium thing. It's like where they have cannabis events in San Bernardino, like that big...
Oh, yeah. I have not been, like... I know, because I know the venue you're talking about, but I haven't been
National
there.
Orange something.
Yeah, it might be like a county fair space.
Yeah.
I'm still like wrapping my head around because I'm fairly new to California, but all the different festivals and events here.
Angela Mazzanti invited me out to one. I was just talking about this with my girlfriend, but I was thinking about how weird it was. I filmed at it, and there was like a bunch of like pretty cool artists there, like Rich the Kid and Dexter were there, that I filmed them, and that was really cool. And she was saying how like the headliner that night was supposed to be Nipsey Hussle, and then he ended up like never showing up. But I was like, wow, that was weird that like I have it in my video. If you watch on YouTube, you can hear her be like, who's ready for Nipsey Hussle? And then she was like, she asked me to like take it out of the video on Instagram because he like never showed up.
Right.
Because it was awkward. But I'm like, damn, I was like this close to like seeing him and filming him.
Oh, that would have been would have been an incredible opportunity.
Right? And then I'm like, damn, that was so not long ago. And then obviously like what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, that was, but like, yeah, High Life though was where it happened, and it was really cool.
Awesome.
But so yeah, you should check that out. On a happier note, why'd you move to California?
It made sense for me to be here work-wise, and then also before going back to grad school, my then girlfriend, now fiance, we wanted to move further west and likely to California. But then, we'd been in Colorado together for a long time. And so I got like in-state tuition and stuff like that. And then we were like, all right, well, let's do 2 more years here. But, I went into grad school already knowing that we wanted to move out here. And then thankfully it worked out that it made sense with Sauna Packaging too.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Because you guys just then expanded.
Yeah, well, right when I moved here was in 2017, so it was like right before California was going legal, or maybe it had just gone legal. I forget exactly.
I think 17 was right when it went.
Yeah, so we were like, great, this market's opening up, like makes sense to have boots on the ground there, because new markets too, like especially in California where it's different, like county by county, and like sometimes like municipality by municipality, like you got to have boots on the ground to like keep up with what's going on, because it all changes so fast.
What was like the toughest challenge or the biggest hurdle that you guys have as a company have had to overcome so far?
I think from the get-go it was selling people on a hope and a dream. We started this company with like a really podunk like 3D printed, we thought it was awesome, but a really podunk 3D printed prototype of what eventually became our first product, and back then, right when we started, the global plastic crisis wasn't in the forefront of the public lexicon the way it is now, and so everything about what we were doing just like seemed a little crazy to people. But
really it's just innovative.
Yeah, or I don't want to like I don't want to toot our own horn.
No, I mean,
It's
you're being humble, but like it's absolutely innovative, you know?
Yeah, it was just a complicated idea to it. It's not even that it was innovative, like, the theories for all of these things have been around for decades. But we were maybe like a little ahead of the public conversation about it. Like I'm comfortable saying that. And so like we would just, people would look at us like bug-eyed sometimes when we were trying to explain like what we were trying to accomplish. Whereas now we have a much easier time talking to like, investors, for instance, about, the importance of a circular economy and sustainability and regenerative agriculture, whereas like a few years ago they just would have been like, what are you talking about?
Right. How does your family feel about you being involved in the cannabis industry?
I think good. Yeah, I think they're stoked. I think they're just happy that I'm happy.
Yeah.
Both
pro cannabis.
Yeah, they're definitely pro cannabis. Neither of them are avid consumers or anything like that. I have the type of parents who, I hear stories and it's like, okay, well, you guys definitely smoked a fair amount in your teenage and, maybe like college years, but not so much after that. So like, it's not like, they're not unfamiliar with it. They're just not like, stoner mom and stoner dad.
Right. And they're still in Switzerland?
Yeah, they're still over there.
Cool. And you go visit periodically?
I do. Not as much as I would like. In college it was really easy because it's like, oh, winter break, summer break, like go home. Real life doesn't really have that. and then starting being an entrepreneur doesn't really have that.
Yeah, there's no
so, the past like 4 years I've been on like I make it back like every other year kind of thing.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah, which is pretty good. But I hope to be able to visit more as, the rest of my life becomes more stable.
You think you'll take sauna out there ever?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, our dream would be to expand globally for sure. When we think about that, really for regenerative and sustainable packaging to work, especially with bio-based materials, it's really all about localizing. You can't have these materials traveling too long of a distance because then, the whole value of the material goes away. Like, if you have like if we were manufacturing overseas right now and shipping our products here, just shipping our products here would destroy any benefit of the material we're using, or, just because of the carbon footprint of like that distance traveled.
Right.
So when we think about expanding globally, like let's say like Europe, what we would want to do is just find regional suppliers and manufacturers that we can work with, because that's how it needs to be done.
Right. And then I'm assuming you would be the boots on the ground initially.
Yeah, hopefully.
So maybe you live in Switzerland again for a little while.
Yeah, I see. When I left, I was so ready to move to the States and was so into like living here. But the older I get, the more I'm like, I could see myself going back someday. But yeah, Switzerland's a great place.
Even if it's part-time.
Yeah.
That's cool though. So when the 2018 Farm Bill passed, you guys were not live for sale yet, right? That was in February, you said?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember
I think it was July.
It was July 2018, yeah. So that was actually right when we launched our pilot program then.
Okay, did that like really positively impact your business, I'm assuming?
It did. I think that was a big thing that, that was one of those standard like investor questions like early on. Okay, so you've got this idea, you're gonna use hemp, but it's not legal, or like how's it going to scale,
right.
If it's like state by state. And so it definitely helped in that sense. Like it just it gave hemp like a facelift,
right.
In terms of like making people excited to talk about it and willing to listen to an idea.
Took away a lot of your guys' problems.
Yes, it did. And we knew that like our lives would become easier because like, okay, great, now there's going to be more people willing to work with it, whether it's manufacturers, whether it's like, polymer suppliers. So yeah, but it's, it's still one foot in front of the other.
Do you guys source most of your hemp from Kentucky?
It's all sourced domestically. I'm not exactly sure what states. I think early on, I know we were getting hemp from Colorado, Kentucky, and North Dakota, but really that's not like, what we're sourcing is like a finished, or like we're sourcing hemp pellets from, a polymer supplier. But I do know it's all domestic.
Cool. I didn't know North Dakota was a hemp producer, really.
Yeah.
We were when we were there, that was a whole lot of nothing, man. Driving out there, I mean. Yeah,
it's we visited Fargo to visit one of our partners there, and like I was blown by my mind was blown by how much was going on in this little town that like seemed like way out there.
Right.
But they've got like the university there, and it's like I think it's like very like manufacturing and like biotech focused and stuff like that, so it's like a really like industrious little place.
Right. Yeah, we stayed in an Airbnb with this random guy. He was like in his 70s, and he like gave us a shot of his homemade alcohol, so we're like, oh cool.
I bet they have great homemade alcohol there.
Oh, it's actually delicious, honestly. And I asked him like, oh, how cold did it get in the winter? He's like -40, and I was like, holy shit.
That's crazy.
My cousin worked in North Dakota for a second, and I remembered it was really cold. And then once we were back in California, I was so relieved.
Yeah.
Like, I am so lucky that it is 80 degrees and it's the end of October.
Yeah. Oh man, I couldn't do -40. I've lived places that have real winters like Switzerland and Colorado. But
does it get super cold in Switzerland?
I'm sure there's places in Switzerland where it gets that cold, but like probably at like a mountain, peak of the Alps. But like, so I can do cold, but I can't do like -40 cold.
Oh, I don't think anyone can do -40. That's like absurd.
Yeah.
That's not livable. What does the future of hemp kind of look like in your opinion, and from your experiences?
I think it's going to be slow and steady, but I think it will win the race. It's just going to take time for all the infrastructure to come into place. And, I think CBD is really big right now. I'm sure it will remain big for a long time, but I think we'll start to see like the CBD side of the industry kind of plateau. And then we'll see other parts of industrial hemp, start to grow and become larger chunks of the pie, whether it's, whether the end products are, clothing, building materials. I think building materials are going to be really huge. I think hempcrete is a really incredible material. And then, clothing, definitely, but I feel like China already has like such a lock on the textiles industry that I think there will be like some domestic like industrial hemp market for to be used for clothes, but it'll be more on like, I think in the US production of hemp for clothing will always remain more on like the smaller scale, like more for like boutique made in the USA brands and stuff. But with building materials though, like if you look at the concrete industry, like there's no like global like concrete, kingpin, because it's the type of thing where like every 50 to 100 miles there's a new local concrete company, because who the fuck is gonna ship concrete thousands of miles? That's ridiculous.
Right.
So like, with hemp, I could see it being used for building materials like hempcrete that could like create, really robust, local hemp markets like all across the country, right? If a lot of it's going to things like that already are localized industries.
Right.
So cool. I see a lot of potential there. And then obviously I think bioplastics is a big opportunity. But again, there's just so much R&D.
Where do you see the future of sauna packaging going in that?
Well,
we talked about the future.
Sauna packaging is material agnostic. We're not a hemp plastic company. We're not a reclaimed ocean. We want to find those new and emerging materials or even existing materials that we can use, to help create that circular model that we're trying to achieve, while figuring out, how those materials then need to be processed at the end of their useful lives and reclaimed and reused. So it's always, and then also just looking at, well, what does the cannabis industry use? The cannabis industry uses rigid plastics, flexible plastics, glass, metal, and paperboard. So I think with time, we're going to, look at each of those, packaging types and try and find, better solutions for them.
So you're not going to just limit it to hemp-based packaging?
Absolutely not, no.
Yeah.
And that's, because it's really all about it's not about, Sana packaging isn't about hemp or this or that. Sana packaging is about how can we move packaging in the right direction, and what materials are going to have the most positive impact, both on the front end, so resource extraction or agriculture, all the way to the back end, recycling and reclaiming and getting back into the market. So you have to look at it more holistically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's good. You've got a good big picture look on things.
Yeah, a lot of
the strategist.
Yeah, right. Chief strategy officer right here.
What can you give what's the elevator pitch of Sana packaging, just to understand?
Yes, the elevator pitch is Sana packaging designs and develops cannabis packaging for a circular economy using 100% plant-based hemp plastic, 100% reclaimed ocean plastic, and other innovative materials. Right. That's our one super long sentence about
and sticking to cannabis industry specifically.
Definitely for the time being. Like I said, there's a willingness to pay for these innovative materials in cannabis packaging, which we don't see in other industries. So that's one reason. The other reason is it's also a huge market opportunity. Another reason is the fact that we're still building out this industry, so we actually have an opportunity to create a packaging system that works. And then the last part is, because we're working with these new and emerging materials, they haven't all reached these economies of scale necessary to compete with other more traditional materials. So, as we help these material supply chains grow, and as we're able to bring down our costs and reach, better economies of scale, we'll absolutely, want to look at expanding laterally into other packaging verticals, whether it's food and beverage or cosmetics or, beauty products. Mm-hmm. That's definitely, in our future, but so much of it is based on being able to prove a certain prove the concept of circular packaging in cannabis, figure out how to close the loop on cannabis packaging, and then be look, we can do it here, we can start doing it in these other places now, and we've built up these material supply chains where we can also provide you with packaging that's fairly price competitive. Mm-hmm. Which right now I just don't think other industries have the willingness to pay for hemp bioplastic or reclaimed ocean plastic, or just the types of materials that we're exploring.
You guys are doing a good thing, I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I like to think so too.
What would be the advice that you would give to someone that's looking to just now get into the cannabis industry, making a product? Starting a product now in the cannabis industry?
Trying to think of the advice I wish I would have got. I think there's a lot of hot trends, so don't continually get excited by the new shiny object. Find a company that seems to be really committed to a vision and a mission, and also has a very clear core business. Right. I feel like a lot of what I see happen to some companies in the cannabis industry is you quickly start to get pulled in so many different directions, and there's so many opportunities that it's death by distraction, right? And just spreading yourselves too thin. Find a company that's laser focused on creating a solution or a product that you believe in, because I think there's a lot of shiny objects that distract people in this industry.
Yeah.
And so you gotta stay committed to what's your core business.
Right. For me, for example, I guess, let's say if you have a limited budget, and a product idea, what's the first thing that you should do?
Try and figure out if it's a good idea, and look into like lean startup methodology for how to rapid prototype it and start getting feedback, because you don't want to jump too far down a rabbit hole before determining that. And I think that's particularly true in cannabis because things are changing so quickly. So like, something that's the standard today could not be the standard tomorrow. And so to make sure that, what you're focusing on, you think will have like lasting value as well.
In regards to like your guys' packaging and childproofing, what do you, I guess like, has that been a challenge for you guys?
Not in the sense, like all of our products have passed the testing with flying colors. So like the challenge for us hasn't been like, oh my gosh, are we going to pass the testing? It's getting up to the point where we feel confident that we'll pass the testing.
Right.
And especially, that's further complicated by like trying to use materials like hemp bioplastic, where it's not something like an HDPE or a polypropylene that everyone has worked with a million times, knows the exact capabilities and parameters and all this stuff for, to where you can like, very quickly assess something. Like we were dealing with a lot more unknowns.
Right.
What wall thickness does it need to be for like, the container to be, durable enough, but still easy enough to pinch in for the sliding top to come off.
Right.
How big do the little like notches need to be that like lock it? All of that was like really challenging at the especially when we had such limited resources. Like right now, if we were to, when we design new products now, it's a much quicker process.
Right.
But early on, that was a really difficult thing to prototype, and we did as much as we could with 3D printing, and then basically once you feel like the 3D printed product is as good as it's going to get, then you move to a prototype mold, which is like a single cavity mold. So like production scale molds, they make multiple units at once, so you could have like a 48 cavity mold where like every production cycle makes 48 units. But so, a prototype one is just 1 unit per cycle, but those are expensive, right? So like before you pull the trigger on building that, which will also take, weeks, you need to be like as confident as you can be. And then you use the prototype mold to do, that can pump out like a few thousand units before it starts to like break down, because you also don't make it out of as durable material as you do the production scale ones. And with those then are what you have, it needs to be basically exactly what the product will be. And if it's wrong, you can finagle the mold and like adjust it in various ways to like try and get it to where it needs to be. But then those are the products that, are going to be your final ones that will be exactly the production scale mold ones. And those are the ones that you use for the child resistance testing. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's literally like you get, there's third party companies that do it, but you literally send them, I forget how many, like 200 samples, and it's just a room full of kids and they like try and open it.
Yeah.
It's like,
how old are the kids?
I think it's under, either like under 48 months old. I think there's like a range or something.
So young.
But young, yeah, surprisingly young. And first they like...
Getting 8-year-olds in that thing trying to open
No, right, yeah, no, the 8-year-old will get right in. But no, and so what they do is like, you got this room full of kids, they give them all the product, and they're like, you've got 5 minutes to try and open it, or 3 minutes, or whatever it is, and they can try and open it however they want. They're encouraged to, hit it against things, step on, like whatever. And then after that, they see how many got in, and then after that initial period, then they explain to them how to open it. Okay, so here's how you open it. And then they give them like 5 more minutes knowing how. And then I think you have to like have like an 80% threshold. Like if more than 20% of the kids are able to get into your packaging, like that's when you fail.
Is that after they explained it to them?
Yeah, or I don't know if it's in aggregate or if it's after. I
Right.
forget. Like
maybe the average.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to go.
That's so interesting. You'd think they'd maybe like try it with older kids too, no?
Yeah, but then you're never going to design something that you know people can't get it, and it's going to honestly be like impossible for like if an 8-year-old can't get into it, like how like I supposed
That's
to
interesting.
get it,
It's like, what's the threshold where an adult could still get in?
Yeah. Like, I don't know, kids become pretty strong pretty fast, you know, and like how hard do you actually want something to be to use? Because the other thing you have to keep in mind is that it needs to be child resistant, but you also have to keep in mind like senior citizens and arthritis.
User friendly.
So like for things like, you know, child resistance is typically for products that everyone uses, whether it's like pharmaceuticals or like laundry detergents or whatever it is. Certain cleaners, like you've got a demographic of customers that's elderly or even younger and has arthritis that needs to be able to, so it needs to be like, it's like a sweet spot between like,
it's a spectrum.
Yeah, it's a spectrum. Yeah. But for cannabis, it's fun. Like, I don't know. I think, you know, flower should not be in child resistant packaging. Like if I could change one cannabis packaging regulation, you know, it'd be so much easier to use sustainable materials for flower if we didn't have to worry about, you know, the child-resistant locking mechanism.
So no child resistance opening? Cannabis product or flower product?
Just, yeah, well, because like, you know, obviously things like edibles or things that are activated, whereas like if a kid eats it, they'll get high. Or ingest it, they'll get high. But like, what's a kid gonna do? Like, eat a nug? If so, weird, because I can't imagine it tastes great. Also, like, nothing's gonna happen. You know, you actually have to like, you know, light it on fire and inhale it for it to like get you high.
Right.
And so, you know, I just don't see like a 5-year-old doing that. So I think as the industry evolves, we need to have the conversation about when is child-resistant packaging appropriate and when is it not appropriate. Because I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we do it for flower.
That's interesting. I've never heard that take on it. That's cool though. So where can people find your products, and also like what are the products that you guys currently have? Yeah,
so we currently have the slide top hemp container, which is like a short-term flower storage box.
Is it right here?
Yeah. Actually, you can grab all that. So yeah, this was our very first product, slide top hemp plastic container, designed to hold up to an 1/8. It's, you know, definitely not a perfect product. It's not airtight or anything, but you know, we designed it for point of sale packaging and for short-term packaging, and it was a great first product. And then after that, we did the pre-roll tubes. This is the hemp plastic one. This is the reclaimed ocean plastic one. They have the same design.
We got the reclaimed ocean plastic.
Nice. Yeah, so the hemp is the brown material, obviously, and the reclaimed ocean plastic is the white material. People ask us about changing the color of the hemp plastic, and right now we just...
Why? Because it's like a poop brown color?
Well, yeah, some people either love it or they hate it, right? You know, some people are like, wow, that's beautiful. Other people are like, wow, that looks like shit. But it'd be difficult to change the color without, you know, damaging the integrity of the material. Is 100% plant-based.
Right.
Obviously, you know, we can maybe make it, you know, darker or black by like adding charcoal, things like that. But we're just, that's just not really where we like want to spend our time right now, you know, changing the color of this, because we can more easily change the color of like other materials we work with, like the reclaimed ocean plastic,
right.
Which is an HDPE. So like, you know, a very common form of plastic. It's a number 2. So we have
maybe people are becoming accustomed to that, like brown is
that's the other
color.
thing. Yeah, exactly, right? Like it looks like this looks plant-based, and I love that about it. But I also love that it's like a durable container.
Could you possibly make it like green?
Maybe, you know, it's all about like what natural dyes are there, and would that affect like, you know, the way it flows through the mold, and you know, all these things on the manufacturing side. Yeah, obviously we can like print on it and stuff,
right.
But I'm sure, you know, we'll crack that nut eventually.
So you have two different
pre-rolled tubes in 2 different materials, and then we also have, so this is 110 millimeters. We also have shorter 78 millimeter versions that are specifically designed for dog walkers.
Nice.
And then
I just got into
also,
those. Those are good.
they're a great size. You know, who needs to smoke like a full gram joint? You know, like
Us together, dude.
yeah, right. Be super high though. And then also vape carts. And then this is kind of this is a recycled glass jar with a reclaimed ocean plastic lid. This is really kind of, you know, the V2 of the, you know, this is going to be, you know, long-term flower storage. We'll have several options for, you know, sealing it. And also, you know, most of California uses glass. So this will kind of be, you know, the product that, you know, kind of replaces this. Whereas like, you know, with the pre-roll tubes, we're just going to keep making more sizes and stuff.
So when you say you have 5, it's like...
So we've got the hemp plastic container, the 110 millimeter hemp tube and the 78 millimeter hemp tube, and then the 110 millimeter ocean tube and the 78 millimeter ocean tube. And those are our 5. And then this is actually a prototype of the product we're launching next month. So this isn't on the market yet.
It just seems like a regular plastic lid.
Yeah, right. I mean, it is. And, you know, it's an HDPE. It's a plastic number 2. It's very easy to recycle. Just what sets it apart is that it's 100% reclaimed. And not just is it reclaimed, but it's reclaimed from the ocean.
Good circular usage.
Well, yeah, you know, because our goal with this is, you know, we obviously, you know, ocean plastic pollution, it's quite literally, you know, one of the most awful things ever. But, you know, there is an abundance of plastic there. So we try to, you know, we do our best to view it as a stranded resource, as something that, you know, okay, there's this resource in the ocean called plastic that we can extract from the ocean and use to make, you know what I mean? It's like looking at it that way. And then the idea is, you know, it's, we work with Oceanworks, they're a super cool company here out of LA, but they've created the Oceanworks marketplace and the whole infrastructure for this reclaimed ocean plastic system, where they work with collectors and processors around the globe, and, you know, that collect and sort the plastic. That's big, so that, like, you know, and basically what Oceanworks provides with, like, their connecting all the dots and their infrastructure is also they verify that, you know, this is 100% HDPE versus like a mixed material, because that's what actually gives the material value. It makes it so that we can repurchase it, manufacture it with it, and get it back into, you know, the market. And then, you know, so it's not quite circular because we're still just like extracting a resource and putting it into the marketplace. But the idea with using an HDPE, which is something that, you know, we actually recycle versus like a polypropylene, which, you know, only has like a 1% recycling rate, is that hopefully we can plug this material back into a closed loop system. And we're hoping to dive deeper into like ideas like this, you know, for circular packaging on a local scale with, like, you know, those grant applications we were talking about earlier.
Right.
But yeah, so there's a very cool opportunity with ocean plastic to both make an impact, like get it out of the ocean, but then like do something useful with that material.
And where can people find Sana Packaging?
People can find us, I mean, you know, it depends where you live. If you're in California, you know, check out Sonoma Pacific, or rather try and find retail dispensaries that carry Sonoma Pacific distribution, or Ocean Cannabis Company, or the Humboldt Marijuana Company, Above Cannabis. Those are a few that come to mind. The list goes on. I think we have like 20 some customers in California. But basically, if you can't find Sana Packaging wherever you live that is legal, tell your retailers to look into companies that use them.
Nice. And you guys are also available in Colorado, right?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of customers in Colorado.
Mostly Denver area?
Kind of all, you know, I'd say the heaviest concentration is definitely along the Front Range. But then I think, you know, we've got customers out on the Western Slope and, you know, kind of all over the state. But, you know, Smokies Cannabis Company, Verde Natural.
Is it easy to recognize? If people are just listening, is there an easy way to recognize these products?
Yeah, I guess it's hard to explain just over the podcast, but I do think that our products have a very distinct design that kind of sets them apart visually from other pre-roll tubes. They're not pop tops. They're, two pieces. You've got a fully removable lid that snaps in kind of like similar to like a pill container.
Mm-hmm.
And
does it say sauna on it anywhere?
It does on the lid.
How do your guys' investors feel about like smoking and or smoking on camera or
I think it all depends on what the outcome is, right? Like I'm sure like if one of us smoked on camera and then like ended up looking like a complete idiot,
right,
then like there'd, maybe be a problem. But, most of our investors are investing in cannabis, right? And so they've got to be like, somewhat open to it. We're lucky that we have, I think, so far so good with like a chill group of investors who we'll typically smoke with when we see.
Nice. That's cool. And what, are they just people in the cannabis industry, or just like kind of people looking to be involved in hemp stuff or packaging stuff?
It's a mix. We've met a lot of our investors through the ArcView group or through like...
What's the ArcView group?
It's an angel group, although now it's, I think, bigger than just an angel group, but it's an investor group in the cannabis industry that's, member-based. And we actually won the best pitch award at their most recent event in New York.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
But yeah, they hold like 5 or 6 events a year all over the country. All like it's basically like investors meet entrepreneurs, and vice versa. And they're probably the most robust investor group in Canada. There's other ones, but they're all kind of smaller scale. But then we have everything from like individuals to Canopy Boulders invested in us a few times. We've got a few like smaller like funds, like just small, not quite family offices, not VC funds, but just like smaller angel funds.
Take me back to like that very first time that you guys pitched to someone for money.
What
was that like? Or like, yeah, pitching to someone to invest into sauna.
Well, the first pitch ever, ever, Ron did at like some like kind of like pitch slam event, and like Ron is great at many, 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 many things. Pitching is not, or rather giving like a scripted pitch is not one of them. Ron crushes it on like, panels, Q&A, like
right,
even just like giving a presentation, but like a pitch where it's like, where you've got like 7 minutes or whatever, kind of 5 minutes,
scripted out
and it's super scripted, right? You got to get through this like great pitch to get people to ask good questions, to have a good Q&A. But the pitch part is really like dialed in, and like, that's not where he shines. That said, like I think he's way better than I am in like rapid fire like Q&A and stuff. So like we've all got our strengths.
Right. And so that didn't go well.
Yeah. So the first time he did it was at this like pitch slam at CU Boulder, and bombed. It was like one of those things where you're watching, you're like, oh God. That said, I've done that in like a few early on like Q&A sessions that I did like solo.
Yeah.
And then we went through like a period of a few years where like I would pitch and Ron would do the Q&A with me, because it was clear that like neither of us could do both,
Right.
And so I'd pitch, we'd both do the Q&A, and then actually at this most recent event, it was my first time doing the Q&A alone in like 2.5 years, because Ron had to be in Denver for the Cannabis Sustainability Symposium, because he was speaking on a panel there. So I was like, the day before, I was like, wait, fuck, I'm doing the Q&A by myself. Like, I haven't done this in years. The last time I did the Q&A by myself, I straight up bombed.
Yeah.
And of course, that was years ago. And like now, like I'm just a lot more comfortable talking about sauna in general. And like, it went fine. There were no issues. It was great.
Yeah.
Like, of course it was fine because that was years ago, but like I still had that like anxiety about like, fuck, I'm going to be doing this Q&A alone.
Yeah, but you crushed it.
Yeah, I think so.
That's good. Hell yeah. Thanks for being on the Bongcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure.
I'm glad to be in your space here.
Likewise, yeah, well, welcome anytime.
Yo, cannabis lovers, thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Bongcast. I hope you enjoyed getting to know James and learning more about sauna packaging. Really, really interesting conversations that James and I were having about sustainability, circular products, recycling, hemp, the cannabis industry, the global cannabis industry, Switzerland cannabis industry, Denver, California. So many great things. I like thoroughly enjoyed having a conversation with James. I'm really excited to see how some of the things that James and I were talking progress in the industry as it continues to mature. Thank you, James, for sharing your space with me. I really appreciate it. You being on the podcast was amazing. I had such a great time, and I'm really grateful for you, man. Thank you. Be sure to follow James and Sauna Packaging on their cannabis journey at Sauna Packaging, which is at SANAPACKAGING, Sauna Packaging. Thanks for listening or watching or whatever it is you did to this podcast, but I'm glad you did it. This was the last episode of Season 2 on the Bongcast. I'm really, really grateful for all of the guests that have been on this podcast so far. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to my girlfriend for helping me record the episodes on Season 2 of the podcast. Look forward to Season 3 at the beginning of 2020. A lot more Cottonmouth Media content to come and more podcasts in the future. But otherwise, yo, I'll see you guys in the next Cottonmouth Podcast. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Baby girl, you're so damn fine, though. Wanna know if I can hit it from behind, though. I'm sipping on you like some fine wine, though. When it's over, I press rewind.
I feel like you guys' kitchen's like a New York kitchen.
Mm-hmm. It sure the fuck is.
I was never a good auditory speller growing up, and it's, always a nice test to just like, wait, did you spell their tag correctly?
Or
Dude,
close
I
to.
haven't smoked a spliff in a while, and it feels real nice.
Yeah, it does. Also, I just want to say, I just did one of those hold in the burp things.
That's funny.
I was like, bet you heard that.
That's at ass.
Cottonmouth Media.